Wasn't that fun? Hey, welcome to another episode of the Rocket MSP podcast. I'm Steve Taylor, your host. Today I'm joined by Ryan and Marco from Produce8. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thanks.
Hi, Steve. How are you today?
I'm awesome. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so Ryan is in charge of marketing and Marco is in charge of revenue. So my assumption is if you have a pricing question, it's going to go to Marco, and if you want to know how the product functions, we're going to go to Ryan. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, for sure.
Perfect. All right. So why don't you give me just a mile high overview? What is Produce8? It sounds like you sell lettuce.
That's probably the first time I heard that, Steve. Thank you very much for it. But we don't sell lettuce.
Okay.
Actually, we're not even in the produce department.
Okay.
We can't buy us in a grocery store. Produce8 is a work analytics application that helps businesses increase productivity. And so just recently, we've launched the company a couple of years ago. The founders, in terms of where this business came out from, is really industry experts. Chris Day, that a lot of people know in the MSP space, that created ScalePad and IT Glue, is one of the founders, with Joel Abramson, who's our CEO, and Mark Scott, one of the founders of Enable Technologies. And I worked with Mark for the last few years building Fully Managed, which is a very large MSP right across Canada. And so when we kind of took a look at what the industry was looking for, when you kind of take a look at what transpired after the pandemic and everybody working from home and remotely and all of that kind of stuff, we noticed that businesses were struggling with productivity. The old adage of, if I work from home, my productivity increases. We're not seeing that in the industry, in the marketplace right now. And so that's where our platform really kind of was born. Currently today, as we kind of target the industry in the marketplace, we're going after MSPs because we feel it's a perfect market fit for, any kind of business that's out there. But because we know the MSP space so well, work analytics and productivity analytics is something that we feel is the next echelon within the MSP space, right? If you take a look at where the industry has evolved since the early 2000s, MSPs were introduced to, remote monitoring and management solutions. We got into cloud technologies, PSA platforms, and then security. So those three pillars are what's core to an MSP business today. We believe in the way we see the marketplace is that work analytics and going to have conversations with your customers about productivity is the next pillar that's going to be extremely massive. We feel that it's a $1 trillion opportunity in the marketplace. And we feel that, this product fits in very, very well, whether you're an individual user or you're looking for organization analytics.
Okay. Now, when I look at your website, if I recall correctly, you guys have I'm going to say a lot, but I'm sure that term's relative, a lot of integrations that are focused on like MSP tools. So are you focused on providing that work analytic information for the MSP CEO to understand their employee, work utilization, or is this for clients?
Great question. I mean, we look at both, honestly. And when we built this company, we were very focused on trying to help, an industry segment that, our founders understood really well, understood the workflow of MSPs, had built them, had built software companies that have serviced them and have done, very well in that respect. So we understand the MSP workflow, but right away when we're kind of looking at the problem set that we're looking at a knowledge worker problem set. 75 million people in North America that work on computers all day long. problems that we're solving are for that larger audience as well. But we're very focused, first on helping MSPs operationally, and then extending that out to their own clients.
All right. Well, this is all about a demo. So, without further ado, can we dive into a demo? You want to set the stage, so to speak?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's actually the coolest thing about your podcast. Was that it's so product focused, so it gives an opportunity to actually kind of show what we've been building and some of the cool things that we do, and actually a bit of a kind of a unique thing today is that we're actually going to be showing you product that even some people in our company haven't seen yet. So we've got a big new release that's going out next Monday, and so your show is the first people that are going to be seeing this, and super excited to talk about those features and what we built, and kind of walk you through the whole story from beginning to end. So starting with the storytelling, I think as Marco alluded to, one of the big problems that we see in the world is that we've seen this decline in productivity over the last 4 years reported generally. We see productivity levels generally declining, but also hearing people complaining about employee hours worked are going up, burnouts going up. And so this is really interesting moment in history where you've got productivity declines and hours worked actually increasing. And I think the big question that everybody had was why, right? So how is it possible that we're working more than ever before, and getting less accomplished, and our people seem to be struggling a little bit. And so that's kind of where we started. And so our focus was to really trying to understand and solve that problem the way we looked at it. We did a lot of research as we were building up this company, and looking at the what is really driving this whole thing. There's a lot of different things that were kind of poignant. One of them was just awareness, like helping companies understand what do remote workers do these days, and what does work look like, and where are they broken, and how could we help them. But there was this bigger problem that really emerged, was this issue of the distracted workplace, right? So tons of stuff going on every day for workers. It's been, it's a more distracting environment than ever before. So we spend more time in meetings, more time in, messaging tools, getting bombarded by notifications all the time, and context switching, right? So, we can't, move through the day the way that we used to. And so we really believe that this is really what's kind of driving this productivity challenge that we've got today. And so we started with this idea of, look, if we could actually start looking at how we're actually using our technology, what our work patterns are, what our behaviors are, surface that data and visualize it back to knowledge workers, to managers and to CEOs, that we could help them understand where the problems were, and then start prioritizing fixing where we're broken, right? All of those problems that we talked about, the meetings, the messaging, and all that kind of stuff. And so where we get data from, and I think our product story really starts from this idea of actually subscribing to our interactions with technologies. And if you can see my screen here, we've got a very simple way. We built browser and desktop extensions that allowed us to subscribe to the interactions that we were actually having with our tech. And in the course of a day, average MSP may be using or MSP employee may be using 20, 30 different applications. Each one of those interactions that we have with those applications generates an event in our product. And the way that we get them, the way we intercept them, is that we actually follow our apps, whether they're on in the browser or on the desktop, and subscribe to those interactions that we have. So you can see here, I've got a browser extension. These are the 70 apps that I've used during the course of the day, just business tools that I've selected, or that my team has selected and said, hey, we use this app. Let's follow how we interact with it. And then same thing on the desktop. We've got the ability to see anything that's running on the desktop. And then recently we've gone beyond that. We've got integrations into our calendaring tools, and also the video virtual meeting tools like Zoom, Slack, and Teams, where we're conversing and talking to people and collaborating with people all day long. And we bring all of that data into Produce8, and we help people kind of make sense of it, right? And the idea being to really help you understand what your day looks like. And so starting with the concept of like, where does this kind of impact a user or an individual in our product, you think about one of your employees, is that we brought all of that data together and we ship them a daily report and says, look, this is what your days look like. This is where you're spending your time. These are the, how we've kind of interpreted that data and what it means about your focus and how intense your work day is. And then allow them to, take some actions against that. And so this is what the analytics tool kind of starts at from a user story. If you think about it from the perspective of our first user, someone that's running an MSP or maybe an operations person in MSP that's interested in this topic of productivity, the way that they start this journey is they sign up for our app. Takes them, a few minutes to basically set it up to create all the different applications that they may use. And because they're using browser and desktop extensions, it's really, really, really fast to be able to, add, every single tool that you're using and start piping data into Produce8. And, from there, it's the story of actually, adding the organization, inviting people to engage with our product. And I think what's unique about what we've done is that we've looked at this productivity problem, and we've looked at the way that companies are solving it. And today there's really like two realities. There's this, kind of top-down manager-focused tool set where, we're evaluating the productivity or, monitoring the productivity of employees, and the data kind of comes back to managers and we help them understand what's going on in the organization. And there's a lot of obvious backlash against that. It doesn't make a lot of employees feel comfortable. And more of it really doesn't help the employee actually improve how their day goes. And then you've got this other set of tools, which is really focused on individual productivity. You think about, these little, time trackers and tools that individuals use to improve productivity, from simple things like screen blockers or Pomodoro timers, all of these different tools that, kind of are leaning towards helping the individual. But what was really missing was something in the middle that really helped individuals, teams, and organizations really tackle the challenges that we've got at various levels, because the problem for the individual and how they manage their time, how they're moving through their day is very different than from the team level problems where, the way that we collaborate is a problem, or organizational level problems where, meeting overload and meeting culture is a real problem. So starting with this idea of inviting people into the application to start working on productivity, and helping them understand their days, we have really two paths that we follow. So path one is, send a link to the individual and let them sign up and start working on it themselves. Or path two is, we're going to start working on this as a team. We're going to bring, say my service desk together, invite them into a shared workspace, add all of our apps and start looking at what do our days look like? Where are we broken? Where are we losing time as a team? And so it starts with this whole idea of this invitation. And so I've kind of created this invite. I actually got sent an invite from someone on our marketing team to this new kind of workspace, this shared workspace. And this is kind of what it looks like. I get this invite from them. And what it shows me is that I've got this opportunity to join the team, and then tell me what applications that team is using, right? So, this marketing team has, a list of applications that you can see here that we are interested in, that we use inside this group. And I have the opportunity as an employee to actually share my data with this team, or if there's certain things that they're using, say like Facebook's a really good example in a marketing team. It's a business app for some people on a marketing team, but for everybody else, it's personal. So we just can choose not to share, I can choose not to share my data with that team. And so I get this opportunity to say, yeah, this is all good. I use all these tools and then accept that invitation. And then it brings me into the workspace. Now, additionally, we talked about the browser and desktop extensions, but we also integrate directly via API with the calendaring tools and call systems like Slack and Zoom, Teams, like the general kind of video call systems. And it also allows me that opportunity to say, hey, yeah, I'm going to add my data from those applications as well. And as a user, what I would then do is you'd go through, and authorize and say, yeah, that's me in Google, that's me in Teams, that's me in Slack. And then now there's a connection between my identity in Produce8 and my identity in those systems, and then it can start pulling down my calendar, my calls, and things like that, and visualizing them, right? So that's the very kind of fast intro into how we get into the application. The next step is actually walking you through and actually showing you what Produce8 actually looks like. So do you want to, I'll pause for questions there if you've got any. If not, I'm going to jump in and show you some more.
Just keep showing me stuff. I'm liking this so far.
Okay, cool. Okay, so the way the activities that we have, so you think about every single time that I open the Slack client and look at it, it renders like the start and stop duration of an event. And what those events actually come into our application as is these activities, right? So a view, of Slack, or a view of, Teams or Figma, or, actually joining a Zoom call, the actual durations. And so we have this kind of logging that's going on. This is all we have it here. It's not really things that people typically interact with, but for your audience, I really want to show them kind of how these events come into our application and what they look like. And so all of these events, Elliot visiting Google Docs, and this is production data, by the way, or, going to LinkedIn, every single one of those events comes in as a start stop duration. And then we then take those individual interactions and we show them back in the form of a timeline. So if you think about, all of these different tools that are being used in this new team that I just joined, you can see that I've just started sharing data with it. And you can see that that data is actually, me demoing this application. And this is what the rest of, the team members that are in that group right now, this is what their days have actually looked like so far. And you can see them kind of moving through, tools like Google Docs and where we're expecting to do, productive work that our marketing team would be working on. But also, the time that we're spending in collaboration, in terms of the actual interactions with, every single time that I open my Slack client, what it actually renders is these little slices of time. So that's, basically how the data gets presented in terms of a timeline. So you can understand kind of what each day looks like. We then take that data and we kind of roll it up into metrics that help us really understand, the summary of all of that data over the course of the day or over periods of time, what that actually looks like. And I'm going to show you kind of a bigger team, like our sales, marketing, and CX team. You can start to see like a lot of different tools being used, a lot of different workflow patterns as people are kind of moving through their day and moving through their technology. So this is the timeline. And then sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I've got a couple questions about the timeline.
Yeah.
So when viewing that, so like, let's say we click that little Produce8 extension in our browser and we say we want to start tracking when I'm on YouTube. Is it smart enough to know that this time Steve was watching cat videos and that time Steve was in YouTube Studio managing our YouTube channel?
Yeah, excellent question. And I think we can actually drill that right back to, even the, the PSA tools or, your documentation system. So really great question. Where am I inside the application? We really focused, we can drill down and I'll actually show you kind of the process of creating an app. This is actually a really good way to kind of demonstrate how this thing works. Is we really focus on the time slice interactions with the app itself. So we're not trying to figure out what actual document you're working on or what client you're visiting or what ticket you're opening or closing. At the top level, we're really trying to understand workflow patterns and behaviors. Where are we spending our time as we're moving across our tools, right? Visibility into work is a really interesting problem, but it's an adjacent problem, right? So
I agree. I agree. But then there's that part of me. So like, I know that I struggle with severe ADHD. It's been diagnosed and they still won't give me medicine for it. So yay, untreated ADHD. So what that means is when I hop onto LinkedIn and because I need to, schedule a couple posts for work, then, maybe I didn't schedule the posts. Maybe I forgot. And now I'm just scrolling through the feed on LinkedIn for 45 minutes. Yeah. And this is like a real, I wouldn't say this happens to me all the time, but it's happened.
Yeah. I think I think the most interesting analogy, I mean, absolutely, I've actually got the same issue, which is one of the reasons why this project was so interesting to me. But yeah, we get pulled in, to an application when we start doing other things. But I think the really kind of poignant example is even just, Microsoft Teams or Slack, right? It's not really about whether or not we're doing kind of productive work in those applications or whether or not they're valuable to us, but they are extremely valuable to us. And even now, as Teams is building out and expanding, we're bringing, more applications inside that platform. When we talk to people about Teams, they're like, no, I'm doing work in the platform. I'm actually working on documents or collaborating with people. And it's absolutely true. But the interesting thing about those applications, when I jump back into this workspace, after I create this app here, it's about the micro interactions, right? So we have this kind of generic idea. Now you're going to pull me off track here. I'm going to go back in and actually show you. I'm going to show you this thing. It's not about the time buckets of how much time we're spending in Teams. And I think we all have this kind of vague idea that, I spend about an hour a day in the messaging tools and I spend about an hour a day on calls or, another half hour in offline meetings. When we're dealing specifically with those kinds of interactions in Microsoft Teams, it's not about the work. It's about the 250 times a day that we're opening those applications for FOMO reasons, or just, need to check and see what's going on, or because I've got a notification that keeps popping up, or because I need to change all the bolded channels to unbolded, right? It's that, right? And so it's not actually an hour that we're spending in Teams. It's the 250 times that we open that application and the 20 seconds of refocusing cost that it gets us to get back into even shallow work, right? Even working on a ticket, which, it doesn't require deep focus hours. But when you get pulled off onto something else and going back in, you think about those 30-second time slices, they start to add up extremely quickly, right? And so it's that kind of the behavioral problem that we're really digging into and trying to solve, because that's where those big buckets of time actually are. Big blocks of time spent in meetings, little micro interactions with our messaging tools, and all of the impact of the context switching and notifications that are actually coming up. All of that stuff sums up to, I didn't have the kind of day I wanted to have, and I spent it doing a lot of something else, right? So it's that piece of the puzzle that we're super interested in. And like I said, the reason why, I understand the visibility of what ticket is Bob working on and where is that thing at? I get it 100%. But the big problem, the big hours and minutes that are being sucked away from us right now are being driven by those other things. And we got to solve that problem before we actually start digging into, refinements of workflow, which is also interesting. But we want to deal with the big problems right away, right? And I think, Marco mentioned it, at the top, meetings, messaging, notifications, inefficient workflows. This is all the stuff that we're super, super interested in. So just getting back into that, the demonstration of this. If you look at how we're using Slack, you get this idea of where in the day, if we're constantly going back into those applications, where are we getting that time to actually focus? And so it's not the 10-minute phone calls or the 10-minute meaningful, intentional interactions with the tool. It's the 5-second, 1-second interactions that pull us away from the other things that we're doing. And we get people obsessed with this idea of, I just need to turn that down in order to be able to create that space to be able to do the things I need to be able to get done, to close tickets faster, right? To be able to move through my day more intentionally and generate results. Because at the end of the day, how we spend our time and the way that we're working today is the thing that's creating the outcomes that you're tracking Bright Gauge. It's the thing that's creating those results, right? And what's interesting is that we've gone away from, over the last 15 years, it's become a vogue saying, look, let's just focus on the outputs. Let's just focus on the outcomes. And 100% we believe that's true, right? Your ticket close rates, or your service utilization rates, if you're an MSP, those are absolutely the things you keep your eyes laser focused on. But when those numbers don't get hit, the interesting question is why, right? What are we doing as a team that's stopping us from being able to accomplish those objectives, right? Or as an individual, what am I doing during the course of my workday that's pulling me off track? And we're showing it back, saying, look, this is what the day looks like. This is where you're spending your time. So that's the start of it, really.
That's really interesting that you are framing it that way. So if I put my IT guy hat on, where I'm just a lowly employee, something that happened. Oh gosh, I'm really gonna start dating myself. Back in like 2007, 2008, so, so long ago. Um, I was working for an IT consulting company, and we all had personal Blackberries at the time. This was
Yep.
before the iPhone even existed, and they wanted to install, and I couldn't tell you what it was called now, but they wanted to install some like tracking app on our Blackberries, because they wanted to track like when we went to a client and how long we were there. and and from like a management standpoint, it makes perfect sense, but from an employee standpoint, it felt like I was being micromanaged, and like I had Big Brother always watching me. Like I remember the office manager emailed or texted one of the guys and said, "Hey, why were you driving so fast on the freeway?" And
Yep.
like we're using our own personal cars, we're using personal phones, and so like I get it, you want us to be safe, but at the same time, we're not driving your car and we're not using your phone. get
Yep.
get out of here, you know what I mean? So what do you say to the employees who have those same fears today about what you're offering MSPs?
Yeah, I mean, I could write a book on this one. Yeah, so I mean, at the top level, like saw and felt the exact same thing. So when our founders, the guys, Chris and Chris Day and Joel Abramson and Mark Scott, when they were looking at this problem initially for their own business, like for fully managed the MSP that they're running. Um, the organization had gone nearly remote. They've been talking about this problem of like knowledge work and lack of visibility and lack of understanding, because especially as your MSP is growing and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, you get more and more disconnected from the team. Right when it's five, it's really easy to kind of you're co-located, you're working together, you kind of have a sense of like what everybody's doing. But as the organizations get bigger and you start adding layers and people and geographies, you lose touch, right? And so they've been looking at that for a while. And when they went around to look at the options that are out there, the only thing that they could find was employee monitoring tools that were really digging into this problem. And they're like, these things are terrible for culture. At least that that was their beliefs, was that, look, this is not great. And I would add to that, it doesn't do anything for the employee, right? So having a tool that provides management insights where you could see what everybody's working on, provides this kind of Big Brother kind of vibe. That makes people feel uncomfortable, but it doesn't help them, right? At the end of the day, the employee, managers, owners, at the end of the day, all anybody's trying to accomplish is to have highly productive, effective work days. And so the question is like, how are we actually helping accomplish that? And so our approach is, we built this application and said, look, we need to be able to do a few things. We need to give people control over their data, employees. We need to give them the opportunity to opt in to the application to share it, instead of installing something on their device that they know about or don't know about, or tell them they have to use it. And then we need to give them a different way to engage. And so we had this idea of like creating these personal workspaces. So what you see here on your screen right now in terms of shared workspace, we do the same thing for the individual. And as they join the applications, look, if you want to go work on this on your own, as a manager, I'm totally happy if you just go away and are kind of obsessing about, your workday and improving productivity. Great, go ahead and use it for yourself. And if we've got team-based problems, like we've hit the wall, performance numbers off, not what we wanted them to be, and we need to understand and be able to have conversations about what are we doing as a group collectively. Shared workspaces give you that opportunity, so everybody's got access to the data. We could all have a conversation about what are we doing with teams? What are we doing with meetings? Like, we need to start fixing these problems, and giving people data to do that it really provides that opportunity.
I think also, like when you take a look at it, Steve, like the idea of what we're trying to do is, and Ryan has mentioned, this is not a monitoring tool. It's not an employee monitoring tool. It's an employee productivity tool. And so the idea of what we're trying to do is give the individual employee insights into how they work. And, you know, we internally love to use the analogy, the Fitbit analogy that I have, you know, on my wrist, in terms of providing me information in terms of, you know, how many steps I'm taking during the day, what my heart rate is like, how I'm functioning, all of those types of things. This is kind of the same premise, right? The premise of the only way that I can make changes, you know, to how I work is to get feedback. And by getting feedback, I can then analyze, and then I can make the changes that I need to do. So prior to, like, for me, before joining Produce8, I always thought that I'd work fine. Everything that I did was normal. You know, and as you mentioned, if we go back, you know, 10, 15 years, the amount of tools that we're using were minimal, right? There might have been 2 or 3 tools that we were utilizing on a daily basis. Now, you know, we see some people that have, you know, 12 to 15 different technologies that they utilize on a daily basis. And what's the impact of those technologies, right? People are where we've gotten used to logging into social media tools, whether it's LinkedIn's, Twitter, you know, doing your emails. You know, Ryan mentioned, if you're logging into Teams and Slack and you're doing that over and over and over, and you create some sort of a circuit, excuse me, all of those things impact your day.
And I think this is, like, you know, jumping in now to, like, the individual experience, because I think if we talk about, you know, yes, organization problems like too many meetings, you got to create policy, you got to engage the company, and you got to start working on it at that level. Team-based problems like, you know, communication, asynchronous work hours, no meeting Wednesdays, like all of these things that we do to try to improve productivity and focus and stuff like that. Those are team-based issues, right? And you want to be able to do those things and see the results of the fact that they're actually working, because that's what we do, is we really show you the kind of the before and after, and how is it actually changing anything, how is it fixing anything. But the individual experience is where, you know, personal habits, like how I work, you know, my productivity problems or what causes them is different than other people in the organization, right? So I may have a problem with task prioritization, or I may have a problem with distraction, or I may have a problem with, you know, other things like just scheduling too many meetings or being involved in too many meetings. But being able to kind of reinforce for the individual, look, this is what your day looks like, this is how you're spending it. We send them a report every single day that kind of underscores, like, what did it actually look like in terms of, you know, where did you spend your time, and then what is that looking like over time. And if you think about even like the other end of the spectrum, right, like, you know, are you working too many hours is a really interesting question. And so it's one of these things that we surface. We take all of this data and say, look, you're working 10-hour days, right? And maybe the big thing that's killing your productivity is the fact that you're not taking lunch breaks, right? You're not stepping away from your computer. And we can show you all of those things, like how are you spending your days and what do they actually look like?
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the report. The idea is coaching, but showing you the problem set is the kind of step one, right? And there's this kind of component of self-awareness where, you know, the instant returns off of our product is when I show you, been opening Slack or Teams 250 times a day, just like with the step counters, there's that instantaneous kind of adjustment in behavior that takes place where you start automatically, you know, doing these micro adjustments subconsciously. The second step beyond that is actually action. Like, what are you going to focus on trying to fix of these problem sets? And so we try to anchor this concept in actually creating goals or targets around the things that are causing problems for us, whether it's too much time in meetings, opening Slack too many times. And so we allow, you know, the individual to go and create goals that are private to them, just them, and start, you know, working on the things that are problematic for them. And for me, it's opening Slack. You know, like I mindfully create a goal saying I don't want to open Slack more than, you know, 45 times a day. And then I track that, and every single day I get a report on how I'm doing against those things. And so I can start to explain, like, why does my day look like this? You know, or what was I, you know, doing yesterday? Like, why are my days looking the way that they are? You know, I can actually start working on those things and start fixing those problems. And we're trying to support that habit and behavior change at the individual level in a safe environment where they've got their own private workspace, private data, and all those kinds of things that only they can see. But then we can also still deal with these team-based problems, these organization-based problems. And so I think what was really exciting, and I now want to kind of show you the new stuff that we are going to launch on Monday, is that we can start taking these kind of aggregated big time bucket things, the meetings, right? The time and calls, and we can start aggregating that across the organization. And the way that we did that to protect the privacy of the individuals so that they don't feel like, Bob, CEO, who I don't know very well, can actually see what my, specifics of my workday. We kind of abstracted anonymized data from across the company and then push it up into the organization, and now can report on how much time as a business are we spending in meetings, what is the financial impact of that, and as an organization, if we start tackling these things like guys, we need to change how we do our QBRs, we need to shorten them up a little bit or make them more crispy, we need to maybe be on fewer vendor calls, right? That we can actually see the impact of that on the business as a whole and then report on it from a financial perspective. And so now we've got the ability to work with individuals on their own habits and behaviors. We've got the ability for teams to have real dialogue based on data, to make changes and see improvements. And now we actually have the ability to show financial impact of those changes and how is it actually changing things at the company level. And so we launched this ability to actually go in and study, how much time is the business spending in internal and external meetings as a whole? How much time are my individual teams? Because I may have a sales team who I want on sales calls all the time. More meetings, good. And same thing with my service desk, right? I expect these guys to be engaging with customers. But for my marketing team, the world's chattiest group of people, I want them to be focused on, the ability to spend time on creating great stories and creating great copy, which means less time in Slack, less time in meetings, right? And so we can even see that at the team level, the differences between how much time as a team, spending in meetings one versus the other, if that makes sense, or even two geos. If you think about it, you may have a service desk in Kentucky and have another one in Missouri, and being able to see the difference between how these people work as a group. And now we can report on that as well. So we've launched, a whole set of features that helps you understand internal, external meetings, time focus blocks, and then, being able to go in at the organization level and see some of the same data. Like, how is my whole organization consuming all of these apps that people are creating subscriptions to follow? How are we consuming them, and what's the financial impact of that, right? So, today we spent approximately $528 looking at Slack, and that's something we now know about our organization. And if you want to look at that over a longer time period, this is actually gonna be scary. No, it's the most, you can't unsee it is the problem. Yeah. So
okay, that's good.
In the last month, we spent $12,000 looking at Slack.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I was excited because I saw the Visual Studio Code as the number one object.
Yes, that's good. So the people that actually have the ability to focus are in engineering, and those of us with ADHD, we're in marketing. But that's what you want to see, like the time spent in the PSA, the time spent in your documentation system as an organization. We spend a lot of money on tools. Are they getting used or not? And I think that's an interesting byproduct, of getting people engaged in this process, is we actually start seeing all the stuff we bought and a bunch of stuff we didn't buy. We start seeing people innovatively adopting new tools and applying them and trying to solve problems. We see them picking up AI tools and actually consuming them. We start to see their work patterns changing as we bring in automation technologies and the impact on the organization, on the team, and on the individual. And it's all of this made possible by the ability to extend an invite to people to say, hey, look, we have this problem as a company. We want to go work on it. We want you to go work on it. And we're going to give you a really safe way to engage that meets the needs of the individual, the manager, and the owner of the business.
The nice thing about this, Steve, also is, we talk a lot about the employee, but the business owner, the owner of the MSP, when they need to make decisions that are critical within their business, this will give them the insight into how the operations of the business are going on. The other thing that you're going to hear about us in the next month is we're going to be launching a partner program. And through that partner program, MSPs are going to be able to go out and resell this to their customers. So can you imagine a VCIO going into a client's environment and giving them this data and this information? Extremely powerful as they're sitting down with them, trying to figure out 1 and 2 year roadmap with them.
I gotta say, so my first thought is, the whole Big Brother thing, and you guys, I'm gonna say you quelled that suspicion of mine, but let's be honest, you probably have some MSP business owners trying to use your product for evil. But as an analytics nerd, I love that you're like, okay, here's what our average employee cost is, and here's how many hours all of our team members are spending in Slack. So here's how much we're paying people to chat. And like that's that probably makes you a little sick to the stomach when you look at that 5-figure number and see how much you've spent on people chatting with each other in Slack. But on the flip side, those are chats that could have been meetings or could have been emails. So sure, there's the GIFs and the memes and all that you probably have in a random Slack channel for employee morale, but it is communication that for the most part is important for the success of your business.
Absolutely. And I think that it's one of the reasons why when we started out unopinionated, right? Like we didn't say if Slack is a bad app, Google Docs is productive work, right? And if you actually think about a service desk, like your dispatchers and teams, and you want them to be, right? Like you want them chatting all day long. That's what their job is, right? And so we didn't start with this idea that Teams is bad. And build the app around these concepts. It was like, no, we use this tool, but if you start to really think about like the problems, like you can see here on this screen, like this is, team revenues usage of this application. This is Slack, right? And we can see how we're consuming it over the course of the day. That's all really interesting. But it becomes really poignant, when we actually flip over, like we said, like it's not necessarily about the time in app. It's about the number of times that you open it. And I'll give Joel a hard time here, our CEO is like, if you really, get into like opening it a couple thousand times over a week or whatever, those micro interactions that we're doing, like we're doing work, we're engaging, we're collaborating, but it's at the margin, that's where the time loss is. That's where the inefficiency is. That's the thing that's stopping us from accomplishing the objectives of the business, right? Closing tickets or, serving customers. That's the time loss, right? And so it's not about this kind of binary view of the world, like this is good, this is bad, or even blaming the employee. It's about understanding that collectively, the way we work now is kind of crazy. And we need to start fixing that, because if we don't, we can't keep shaking the finger at the employee and saying, go be better, right? The thing that's blocking them from being able to realize productive work days, part of it is a technology we introduced to them, we gave to them and said, hey, go collaborate. And we never really thought about the implications or costs associated with that. Well, now it's a problem, right? Now we got to start working on it. And that's why we're focused on that problem set. That's why meetings, that's why messaging and notifications and context switching, because that's where the problem is today. Like that's the big thing we need to go solve.
Okay. Now, how are you using the data that's being collected? Because that's the other thing is, I know a lot of MSPs will be hesitant to sign up for Produce8 because what are you going to do with all this information you're collecting from them?
So the simple answer is their data is their data. So we are not mining, making use of, monetizing, selling, anything to do with their data. We are interested in a couple of things. So one is the idea of benchmarking has been brought up many times to us right from the early days of conceptualization. We started thinking, hey, like one of the questions everybody wants to answer is like, is this good? Like, is the way that I'm doing this good? Like if we spend an hour a day in Teams as a company, how does that compare against my peers? And so the next kind of evolutionary step for us, or one of the next steps, is being able to kind of consider how we can share and create benchmarks. And our first step towards, the idea of maybe offering MSPs the ability to opt in to share data, to where you can bring back benchmark data and actually show them and saying, this is an aggregate of what a company like you looks like. This is what a level 1 technician looks like for an individual. And this is how you compare. We are going to be very careful about going through that process and thinking about what is the process by which we would, be able to aggregate data from our customers, push it out as a group, and then bring it back down to them and say, this is what a benchmark actually looks like. But, our default position, whether it's the employee or our customers, is that their data is their data and they need to have control over it. And we're not here to monetize or make use of that in any other way other than to look, here's the service and here's what your workday looks like.
I will say that if you were to take that data and, like you said, use it as a benchmark, like, hey, on average, people open up Slack 300 times a day, and I see you open it 800 times a day. So maybe there's something you can do about your Slack usage or whatever, right?
Yep.
That type of insight I think would be helpful. But yeah, as long as you're not like selling that data, like here's something that I recently learned, and I should have known, but I never really thought about it until the article came up in my newsfeed. We've got a Chevy Equinox. It's a newer one. It's the internet connected kind, and they take all of my driving data and they sell it to LexisNexis so that the insurance companies now know Steve drives like this and he stops like this and he does a lot of fast accelerating and whatever information they can glean from that driving data that their little app collects. And I think that as we get more and more of these monitoring type of solutions, people are just going to assume that's what you're doing with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the simple answer from us is that's not our business. We're not making money off of on the back end in terms of what that data means and how it's used. The data that we collect is for the people that contribute it. And fundamentally, the problem set we're trying to solve, and it's this is $1 trillion problem, right? Like the time loss, and is well documented, well researched, over the last 5-6 years. We understand the cost of context switching. We understand, time loss in meetings. We understand time loss in messaging. Like these things are well known, and that's $1 trillion problem when you look at the 75 million knowledge workers, not just the MSPs, but your customers, right? The people that you're doing business with. We solve that problem, we're going to do extremely well as a business. Our partners are going to do great, as a business. That's where we're focused, is just purely, that, $1 trillion problem in North America. We want to go solve it. And then there's nothing beyond that besides that we need to be interested in.
But even with the information, what we do with the MSP partners is we have customer success teams that will work with the MSP to analyze that information and then help them out, right? So if an MSP has meetings problems, we'll use that as an example. Our customer success team will create impact plans and take that data and then work with everybody to help them transition their business to reduce. If meeting reduction is a goal of theirs, then we can create goals in the application, and then everybody can start driving the business that way. So if we can help reducing goals, we can put an ROI and we can actually put a number to that. So those are the types of insights and the support that you would get from Produce8 in terms of working with people. Ryan, I'm not sure if we have time, but maybe it makes sense if we can kind of show people how the goals functionality works in the application. Because the goals pieces is really, like I use goals daily because that's what helps me know, am I on track? Like, am I on track in terms of either reducing the amount of meetings I want to have on a daily basis or any kind of other changes that I want to make? Maybe it's, I don't want to spend 6 hours a day in Zoom calls. So, that can be one of my goals. Maybe I want to take it down to 4 hours a day. And then what are those extra 2 hours that I have in my day? What can I do with that? Well, there's probably a lot of things I can do with an extra 2 hours that I don't have to be in Zoom meetings. And then how does that roll up within the organization as well?
Yeah. So for every single metric that we track for the individual, we give them the opportunity to create targets and goals around that. And so if you think about like the Slack problem is the number, or Teams problem is the number of interactions, that you create a goal around how many times I'm opening that day and set it, and forget it. We basically send you a note every day saying this is how you're doing against your goal. So we allow them to do that on a like daily or weekly basis, because individual days may just be noise, but over a week you start to see the trend and the pattern of like how like you actually are using those tools. And so this idea of like, here's a simple goal, like I don't want to work more than 9.5 hours a day, and so I set a goal for myself on a daily basis. Look, it's showing me that the data that it interpreted is it showing like 7 hours of kind of digital working time, including those weekend days that you didn't really want to work. And we can actually set targets for ourselves. Say, okay, like 9 hours, 15 minutes. That's the cap. I don't want it to be more than that. And so now I've got that goal established, being able to look back over, the last 3 months, like what did the app interpret in terms of my working hours? You can see the number of times that I was over that objective of, not working more than 9 hours and 15 minutes. And this gets sent to me every single day in my, email if I want to engage with it that way, or just like log into my daily report. One of the points of this whole thing is to, be able to experience like behavior change and get all of the benefits of reducing the time I'm doing with all of these crazy things, coach new work habits and behaviors, but to not have to spend more time in another app to accomplish that. And so like our mobile app, looks very similar to this in terms of the report that it sends, but it's really meant to give you that kind of 90-second check-in. What did yesterday look like? Was it good or bad? How did I feel about it? How do I feel about the day ahead? And then go. And then the next day, same thing. And so we're trying to coach and reinforce those behaviors with things like goals. You're going to see a lot more features that come up that look like this, which are actually not just show you the scope of the problem, show you how it's trending, but start reinforcing behavior change and new habit creation that are going to result in, burning down this 2 hours of time loss that collectively, or on average, the knowledge workers are losing every single day to these factors that we talked about. And it's about building and reinforcing new habits, one after the other, to get to that level where we've, all recovered this 90 minutes that we keep talking about.
All right, so I've got a couple questions. I think they can be good with quick answers. One, are you able to track mobile or tablet devices if like I wanted you to?
Mobile, mobile devices and tablets, in terms of app usage on those tablets, that's coming for sure.
Okay.
So we've got about 90% of the workday right now, or 95% of the workday, just through kind of actually more than that. When we've got calls and calendars and stuff like that, we've got a pretty good view of like most of your data. But yeah, we're going to be going there as well for sure. This, especially for the messaging tools and email, we know people are spending a ton of time there.
And let's say an employee really wants to use Produce8 but can't get buy-in for the whole company to do it. Is this something an individual can just say, hey, let's start using Produce8 myself?
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, for sure. We have single user licensing as well. We kind of figure that individual might be a CEO for themselves, especially like, sub 20 employee companies, like the people that are probably not having the days that they want to have, probably the guy that runs the company, right? And so that's, whether it's an individual, in an operations role or on a service desk or at the CEO level, whoever, they can absolutely pick up the product and start using it alone.
And then do we have to integrate it with things? So one of the concerns, like with my own company, is we're not allowed to integrate Microsoft 365 with anything. Like, I'm not even allowed to use a third-party mail app if I wanted to. I have to use Outlook, which is, it's fine. It's security. It's important. So I bitch to bitch kind of thing, not because it's actually truly affecting me. So, how much can we accomplish using Produce8 without like implementing it or linking it with any of these accounts?
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, if you got the ability to install an extension in your own browser and associate it with your profile, whether it's Edge, Chrome, Brave, whatever, um, the employee can do that by themselves. Same thing
Is
on
there
the
an
desktop.
agent for the computer too?
Yeah, desktop extensions for Mac and Windows as well.
Great.
And so you can accomplish all of those things, and then even the API-based integrations for calendars and for call data from Zoom, Slack, and Teams. It's a user-granted authorization flow. So it's not an admin level application. The user actually says, okay, that's me in that application, and brings it back. So we created the app that way because we felt like the individuals were going to be adding all the tools all over the place, and you didn't want to have to go to a system administrator to do a big rollout of an application. And so it takes like 20 seconds to integrate Outlook into the application for an individual. It's like really fast.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I want to say your interface is gorgeous.
I'll let the guys know. Thanks very much.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a problem. It's called shiny object syndrome, and like I always want to play with the cool looking toys, even if sometimes they don't even do me any good. Like I had an RMM tool I demoed a few months ago, and it was like, it was beautiful, but I don't need an RMM tool. I'm not an MSP anymore.
That's cool. No, thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, we're trying to keep the product as clean as possible and not just fill it up with stuff. We want it to everything we put in there to be meaningful. And like I said, the intention, we actually measure how much time we spend in our own app, and we think other people should too. It's still like 90 seconds of engagement. So we don't want to actually distract you with more stuff, but the idea is just give you the insights you need to be able to get on with your day and start solving problems.
That's really cool. Is there anything else that you think we should know about Produce8, whether it's the company or the platform?
I mean, the big message for us is like, look, we're just getting started. We didn't just go away and build this platform, put it all together and push it out the door, and then we're finished. We're just getting started. And I think that, what you see here, solves a huge problem. But we're going to keep taking steps ahead. And, if you want to know what's coming next, I mean, I hesitate to say it, but the AI components of what do we do with the information and how do we start coaching people and tell them what it means and be able to sum up or correlate some of the things that we're doing. If you started working on productivity hacks, what did they result in? If on your good days your sentiment is X, what does that mean? Like, what's the difference between your good days and bad days? Like, that's where we're going. And the idea is to coach and refine better behaviors. And so I think the big message from us is stay tuned, because we're building lots of really cool stuff.
That is really awesome. Is there anything else you want to show us with Produce8?
We don't have enough time.
The last thing, and probably because I know a lot of people are wondering, they'll take a look at this and they think it's extremely expensive, and it's $18 a user a month. So the amount of value that you can get out of this platform, and the insights and the savings that you can make within your business and drive more revenue and increase productivity for $18 a user, we're making it easy for MSPs to buy this.
Yeah, and even if you're just a 1 or 2 person shop, I saw that you have a free version.
Yeah, and so I think the intention with the free version is really to demonstrate how this thing works. And I think people have so many questions about, like, how do you get data? What does it look like when I share it? And so we created that free version of the app to be able to demonstrate This is where data comes in. If you got someone that you're working with that you want to show them shared data, this is what it looks like. How do I have control over my own data? How do I opt in? All of that kind of these questions that people have. That's really what that thing is meant for, is to really help them with that. And then if you want to go and add, start focusing on how many times am I opening Teams a day, you can start working down those kinds of problems. But yeah, it was really there to help, answer some questions about how does our product work? How does data sharing work? And how much control do I have over my own data? And that's why it's there, is just to, to start, helping people understand those things. So.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on here and showing off your platform. I'm really impressed by it. And
thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've had this circled on the calendar for 5 months, Steve. It's a huge honor to be on, and thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Well, hey everyone, thank you for watching, and we're at the end of our hour, so I will catch you guys at the next one. The next thing I have actually is on Friday. Friday, I'm going to meet with Field Effect. We're going to do a demo of that cybersecurity platform. So come check it out. Thanks. Take care, everybody.